Welcome to Lost for Words, a podcast sharing the opinions, glories, and interesting stories of guests. I am your host Jason, and this week I am joined by Scottish author Scott Alcroft, who is currently living in the south of Spain. Scott joins me ahead of his book launch for With Change Comes Consequences, which is out on the 29th of September, or if you are listening later, then it is out now on Amazon. Scott joins me to discuss his upbringing in Ayrshire, working in the armed forces, and how this took him around Europe, before settling in Spain and deciding to write and self-publish several books. Scott talks me through his previous 5 books to date, and then we discuss the upcoming book, With Change Comes Consequences. I will speak to you on the other side. A quick housekeeping note before we get started. Please leave a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts, whether that be Apple, Google, Spotify, Podbean, or any other platform. It's the best way the podcast can grow and better content can be produced for you, the listener. It's your listening experience that matters the most. But enough from me, now on to today's episode of Lost for Words. Hello mate, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How's yourself?
I'm good. How's the weather like in Costa del Sol today?
It's beautiful, man. It's been we've had the rain for a couple of days there, but it's all sort of cleared up and we're back to normal.
Good man. Right, I'll crack on. Just means you can go about your day. I appreciate you coming on though. Right, we'll go. All the stories start at the beginning then, Scott. So where did you grow up, and how would you describe your childhood?
I grew up in a town in the west coast of Scotland called Saltcoats. My childhood was amazing. My mum and dad always worked in Saltcoats back then in the, Christ, I'm showing my age now, the early 80s. I was born in 78, but in the early 80s, for when I can remember, it was a cracking wee community. I lived in a street called Smith Drive, and it was right in front of the house was a big massive square, like a park. So all the Waynes used to play out there, and all the dogs. You'll remember years ago we used to have loads of stray dogs and that would chase the motors along the street, and it was just amazing. We played football there, and you could chat with your neighbour's door back then and ask for a piece of jam and things like that. So it was just a brilliant wee place to grow up, and it sort of gave me my call a spade sort of attitude. People face all coats don't suffer fools gladly, and it gave me a great grounding for the guy I am today, for sure.
Good. And then when you think about your childhood, did any of the experiences you had growing up form a part of your writing today?
I wouldn't say my childhood, no, definitely since I've been an adult. I might touch on my childhood in later books and stuff, but for the first 6 books, it's definitely been experiences or people that I've met since I've been an adult. But it's something that I might touch on in later years.
When you were at school, did you realise fairly early on that creative writing was something that was for you?
Definitely not, no. It's something that's only really happened in the past 3 years. I was never really at school, to be honest with you. I used to dog it, as we used to say back in the day, or skip it for skive it for people on the East Coast. I was just a silly wee cheeky boy at the school, and I always wanted to be the class clown, and I didn't really pay much attention. I only really enjoyed PE and French, believe it or not. I really enjoyed French. I really enjoyed learning a different language, and even English, stuff like English and that, I just hated it. Absolutely hated it. Only really enjoyed history, PE, and French, like I said. So I didn't have a clue that I had this talent until I was 40-year-old.
What aspect of it do you think didn't appeal to you then? Because it's funny, you hear of this all the time, that say adults that make a success of themselves much later on will talk about how they either didn't enjoy school or they would openly say themselves, I was a wee dick.
I honestly don't know. It's like I said, I don't know if it was my attention span or just trying to be the class clown back then. I mean, I remember getting kicked out of English classes because I was disruptive and stuff quite a bit. I think I even get suspended for school because of an English teacher as well. It's just, I just wanted to rebel at school for some reason. I really don't know. I can't, even now as an adult, I can't put my finger on it, but I just seen it as a waste of time, school. And I think when I left school is when I started, I think it was internet really. I think it was like watching documentaries, educating myself, traveling the world and seeing different cultures and things like that. I think you get a better education doing that than you do at school, and that's my personal opinion.
I would agree. I think there's a lot of life skills that school doesn't teach you. Whereas you think maybe if they rejigged the curriculum a little bit and included more things that are actually relevant to living and being a human, then people would maybe appreciate what they had more in terms of their schooling. Don't know if you would agree.
I definitely. There's a lot of things that I think they could teach you at school, like you said, life skills. I, for sure, 100% agree with that.
Move on then from after school. So what did you do when you finished school? What the sort of life story from 16, 17 onwards?
Well, for 16 to 21, I didn't really well. I done a lot, but I didn't. I just sort of mucked about in life, to be honest with you. And I think that's. I'll get to 21 later when I joined the army. But between the ages of 16 and 21, I must have had seriously about 50 different jobs. And like back then, it was like you could walk out of a job one day and get into another job the next. It was very easy to get work back then, and I think that's why a lot of myself and a lot of my friends were very lackadaisical about working, you know. And I remember, well, my first job, I actually worked in a slaughterhouse in Saltcoats. That was the first job that I had, and it was just packing meat and stuff like that. And I remember going home absolutely stinking with all the blood and all the stuff that was on you. And but I really enjoyed it. You know, there was maybe about 100 local guys in there, and the banter was flying about, and you know, you'd go to the cafeteria and rip the piss at each other, and it was a good start in the working environment for me. But one thing that I always wanted to do when I was 17 was get my driving license straight away, and that's one thing that I did do. And the reason to do that was to escape from Saltcoats. I wanted to get away from Saltcoats, and I used to when I was about 10-year-old, we moved to a place called Pennycook, which is just outside Edinburgh. My dad worked for the railway at the time, and what happened was we moved back to the west coast of Scotland when I was 14, and I always wanted to get back to Edinburgh. And what happened was I used to kick about with a bunch of guys who were a lot older than me and play football with them and stuff like that. And their plan was to go around the world. They were wanting to go around the world for a year. So, like I said, they were a lot older than me. I was only 17. So as soon as I passed my driving test, I basically moved to Edinburgh. The plan was to go and work, save money, and then go around the world with these guys. And what happened was they all saved money. I was working in a nightclub, working in a restaurant in Edinburgh, and I didn't save money. So they went around the world and I didn't. And it was me that actually drove them to the airport, and I was devastated. So they all went around the world, and that's what I'm saying. I just mucked about. You know, that's when I started getting into drinking and women and stuff like that. And I was fascinated by it. I came from this small town in the west coast of Scotland, and I'd moved to Edinburgh at 17, and just my eyes were opened. I worked in this nightclub. It was called Club Mercado. Your listeners will notice it used to be Buster Brown's, which was a very, very famous nightclub in Edinburgh at the time, and it got changed into Club Mercado. And just seeing all these different people coming in, that's when I started meeting people from Italy, from France, from Spain, and seeing all these different cultures and different people coming in, and staying in different places in Edinburgh. I met all these different people as well, and I think that's what got me open my eyes really to travel and different cultures, and that's what I wanted to do. You know, that's where I got my attitude for that, I think.
Tell me your experience about being in the army. How long did you last?
I was in the army for 14 years. I joined up in 1999, and my dad gave me some great advice when just before I joined up. And what he said was, join up as a driver, get all your driving licenses, and then when you've done it, once you've got all your driving licenses, then the world's your oyster. Then you can do whatever you want. So that's what I did. Joined up as a driver and got all my licenses. But I need to tell you a quick story about a wee guy, Ian Patterson. His name was, and sorry, it wasn't Ian Patterson. Ian, I can't remember his second name. That will come to me. But the day before I joined the army, I was walking through Saltcoats town centre, and I just wanted to have one last look at the town because, see, even then, at 21-year-old, I knew I wasn't coming back, and I haven't went back still to this day. But I was walking through the town, and he was walking his dog, and it was kind of eerie. It was just me and him. And Saltcoats town centre is always kind of busy, and I don't know if it was maybe a Sunday or something, but I remember it just being me and him walking through the town. And he walked past me and he says, "Hey Scott, I hear you're joining the army tomorrow and all that. I hear you're going away, son." I said, "Aye, oh my." He says, "You're going to do the best thing you've ever done in your life by doing that." I was like, "All right." He says, "Because I tell you what, son, see, every time you come back to this town, the same people will be doing the same things. It doesn't matter how many times you come back, the same people will be doing the same things." And you know what? The guy was absolutely spot on. See, every time I go back, the same people are doing the same things. The same people are sat in the same pubs, and the same people are still doing the same jobs, and it's crazy. That's what the guy said to me.
Then why do you think that is? Why is there a vicious cycle like that here?
I don't know. I think people are scared just to take the plunge. My marriage in 2018 fortunately broke down, and I had the choice to stay in Ayrshire and still do what I wanted to do, or go away and make something in my life. And it takes balls and it's a big gamble, but I just think life's too short, and I think you should just go and do it. It's a wee bit difficult now after Brexit to do what I done, but I just think people need to take chances in life. And so what if you fail? If you fail, you get up and you get off your arse and you start again. I think a lot of people are scared to fail, but you have to fail sometimes, and I think that makes you a better person.
I agree, yeah. I think you need to, even the concept of being in it to win it, you can't experience the good if you don't put yourself in don't give yourself the opportunity to have the experience in the first place.
For sure, man. If a lot of people hit rock bottom, and the only place to go is up from there, I think. So my advice to people would just be to take chances. Life is far too short, and if you fail, you fail, and just take a chance.
I've noted down 4 of the places that I was reading your bio and stuff that you said that you've lived, and we'll just go through them one by one. And I want you to tell me a pro and a con of having lived there. So, firstly, England. So, where in England did you live? Tell me a good thing and a bad thing.
I lived in 2 separate places when I was based in England. I lived in a place called South Cernay, which is in Gloucestershire, and it was outside a big town called Cirencester. And I think Anne Robinson lives there. Her that done that. What was
Countdown?
that show called again?
No, The Weakest Link?
Aye, her. She was for there, and it was quite a kind of posh place. I quite enjoyed it there. I was there for like 2 years, and then I moved to a place called Mill Hill East, which was North London, and I was there for 3 years. So I was literally like, there was a tube station right next to where our base was. So I had the centre of London, the centre of the universe, basically, like on my doorstep, and I absolutely loved it in London. And I was there. When was I there? 2001 to 2004. I would have been in London, and it was brilliant. Again, it took me back to my days when I lived in Edinburgh, and London's a crazy place, man. It's like you can get the best of both worlds. You can go into the city centre in the West End and go and see the bright lights, or you can go to a place where I like to go quite often. There's a town called Camden in North London, and it was such a chilled out place. And that's the kind of guy I am. I'm a very, very chilled person, and I liked Camden. Camden was for me. You would have people with like purple and pink hair walk past you, and they'd do bat an eyelid. Somebody with 100 piercings in their face, and it was just normal. And I liked it. I liked the market there. I liked the street food and obviously the bars and the live music and stuff like that. I really, really enjoyed Camden.
Lovely. Next on the list is Northern Ireland.
I was there for 2 years. I was in two separate places. I was in RAF Aldergrove and I was in Lisbon. And I'll tell your listeners one story. When I was there, I was actually there when George Best's body got flown in to RAF Aldergrove. I was actually stood basically right there as soon as his private plane came in. His body got taken out into the vehicle, and his son Callum was there, and he actually got landed in RAF Aldergrove. I don't know if your listeners will know that, but that's where they get taken. And they drove out and took him into Belfast, and it was quite a poignant moment to be stood there when that happened. And they named the city airport there at the time after George Best, and I remember his funeral when I was there, and I've never seen anything like it. I don't think it was crazy. The whole of Belfast just came to a standstill for him, and rightly so. You know, the guy was a legend.
I remember that. I was fairly young at the time, but I remember when he died, and I think having grown up and becoming more aware of the troubles that exist within Northern Ireland, that he and his death kind of unified everyone. It was a rare moment where it didn't matter what side you were on, that everybody came together in mourning and respect for what he'd contributed to the full country.
Aye, I think he did, and I think Alex Higgins is another one. And I think more recently you've got the boxer Cal Frampton, and then going back again you had Barry McGuigan. So I think you get characters like that in the North Island that do unify the country, and rightly so.
Next is Germany.
Aye, I was based there for 3 years. I absolutely love Germany. Germany is an amazing country, absolutely amazing country. For people that haven't been, it's a very, very clean country. They do everything right. Just everything, they do everything right. Transport, food, drink. The streets are immaculate. I don't think I've seen a bit of litter in the streets for the whole 3 years I was there. Being honest about that, it's an amazing, amazing country. Like in the winter and that, it can go to like -15 in the winter. The winters are terrible, but the streets, like in the UK, like when you get a bit of snow in the UK, it comes to a standstill. See, in Germany, all the roads are clear, all the paths are clear. It's just extraordinary. The country is so well run, and I really enjoyed it there. The summers are roasting, but the winters, the downside it for me was the winters. Oh my God. As you can tell by now, I don't like the cold weather, so the winters are brutal there.
Where in Germany were you based?
I was based in, my regiment was Bielefeld, but I was actually based in a town called Gütersloh, and there was a lot of Turkish people there when I lived there, and I enjoyed it. Like I said, it was a good country to live in. I really, really enjoyed it.
And was that an army base?
I was in two army bases there, but we lived off camp, so we had like this big, massive house, army quarter when I stayed there, and I just stayed in this little community, and every day around you was all soldiers and their families as well, and it was good. Like we'd all get together, you know, and like have parties over there. The houses are mental over there. You've got like a basement. So if they just made their basement into a bar, as you do. So there was a lot of partying and a lot of get-togethers when I was there. It was good times.
Good. Moving on to seemingly present day Spain and Gibraltar. What appeals to you about living there?
Well, I was based here as well in Gibraltar from 2007 to 2010, and I just fell in love with the place. A lot of people say that Gibraltar is Marmite. You either love it or you either hate it, and I just fell in love with the place. My 3 years here was definitely the best time. You know, Spain right in your doorstep, Costa del Sol right in your doorstep, Portugal like 2-3 hours away, Seville an hour away. And the place is just unbelievable, and I took full advantage of it when I lived here. I loved the weather, I loved the people. It was perfect for me. And going back to 2018 again, when my marriage fortunately broke down, I got the opportunity to come back here. And when I left here in 2010, I just knew that I'd be back one day. And I always I thought about this place every day. That's the God's honest truth. And when I got the opportunity, there was only one place that I was going to head to, and that was back to Spain, Gibraltar.
If we move on then to the writing, when did you realise that you wanted to release a book?
What happened was I moved to Spain 2018, and I think I got here, it was the June or July that I got here, and I moved to a place called Duquesa, Porto de Duquesa, which is just up the coast and the Costa del Sol a wee bit, and I hated it. I didn't enjoy living there. My dream was to always get back to Gibraltar, run about Gibraltar. So I moved to a town called Lilinha with a couple of pals of mine, a married couple. I moved in with them. And what happened was I was doing security work, 12-hour shifts, going to the gym and coming home to this like bare bedroom. And I had a laptop and stuff, and I just had this mad story in my head about a wee guy that finds a lucky bunnet. So I started to write it, and it just started off as like one chapter. And I knew a couple of authors, Scottish authors. A guy called Des Dillon was one. He wrote Singing I'm No a Billy, He's a Tim. I'm sure your listeners will be they'll know about that sort of. It's a sensational thing, and he wrote that. So I sent him a message, and another mate of mine, Paul Dykes, that's quite famous on the Celtic podcast things at the minute. I sent them both of them a few messages, about how to publish a book, about writing books, and about doing stuff like that, because they'd done it already. And I sent Des, about this book. I said to him, and he said, "Send me the first chapter." I says, "Right, Des, be honest with me. If it's shite, tell me it's shite, and if it's good, just be honest with me." So I sent him the first chapter of the Bunnet, and he said, "It's brilliant." He says, "It's funny, it's good. I just keep going with it." So that's what I done, and I just wrote this wee story, and I wrote it in less than a month. At night in this wee room, wrote this story, and I finished it in less than a month. And then I didn't have a clue about publishing, so I spoke to him, and he said, "Why don't you just self-publish on Amazon? It's easy." So he explained to me how to do it. And also, there's loads of videos on YouTube that you can look at and stuff like that. And that's what I've done. I've just put this mad wee book on Amazon, not expecting anybody to sort of read it. Put it on my Facebook, put it on my Twitter, and it just went mental, chicken oriental. This book just exploded, and everybody loved it.
Did you not engage with any publishers at all? Just straight away went down the self-publishing route?
I didn't speak to any publishers whatsoever. And one thing that I've found since going down the self-publishing route is that a lot of people have contacted me asking me how I publish my books. And I mean, some people might want to go with publishers, but what I find is they ask you for money. So a lot of them will ask you for like $2,000 and maybe give you 50% of your book, or 30% of your book, or something like that. And it's mental, because Amazon, for example, I get 70% of all my sales. So whether that be Kindle or paperback, and Amazon take 30%. But what Amazon do is they promote it. They have it on their website. They post it out. So I don't do a thing. So once my book's on Amazon, I don't do anything. That's it. They just give me royalties every month, 70% of my sales, and that's it. And some of the stuff that I hear about publishers is ridiculous. How much money they take off you, and how much the percentage you want to give you. And I think I've helped quite a lot of people go down the self-published route. And I definitely recommend that to anybody. It's very easy to do, and there's millions of videos on YouTube, and it's literally like you can have a book in Amazon in less than half an hour.
It is very easy. I like that about Amazon, that it's accessible, and I think maybe publishers, the way that you're talking about that would maybe be a barrier to an author releasing a book, whereas Amazon is clearly pulls down that barrier and makes it accessible for people to buy and to get to know. Because I think when I was reading like your wee page on Amazon, what we call it, your biography, it's good and it's easy enough that you get a feel for you and you get a feel for the books, and yeah, it seems a good system. It was easy enough for me to go on, and I know the deal about the trilogies and stuff and the upcoming book. It's all on there, so you've done a great job.
Aye, I think the good thing about Amazon as well is, especially in my books, for example, I'm not sure if this works well, but I'm assuming it does, is that you get to read the first 2 or 3 chapters of every one of my books. So you get a wee teaser, and there's so much information on there. Whereas if you didn't know, you don't get that by going into a library unless you pick the book up and physically read it, and the librarian will come across and tell you, if you're going to buy that, son, one of these sort of things. But like you said, on Amazon, you can read the first 2 or 3 chapters of all my books. There's a description of all my books on there that you get to read before you buy them. And that's what I think's funny with some of the reviews I've had. Most of them have been 5-star reviews for all my books, but you get the odd one. Like, I remember I got a 1-star review or a 2-star review or something like that for, I think it was a Bunnet, and the woman was like, I enjoyed the story, but there was too much swearing in it. And I was thinking, are you having a laugh? The book's set in a pub and a bookies in Scotland, on the west coast of Scotland. Of course, there's got to be swearing in it. So it's like you said, you've got that there to read before you buy. It's a try before you buy sort of thing.
Even before you set out writing the Bunnet, or let's say when you did start writing the Bunnet, did you know in your head that you were plotting a trilogy, or do these things just come naturally after you finish writing one book? You think there's scope to then pick it up in a subsequent book?
I think what happened was, no is the answer to that. I honestly didn't think one person would read the Bunnet, and that's the God's honest truth. I thought maybe a couple of my pals, a couple of my family members, and maybe that's about it. I expected less than 10 people to read the Bunnet, and that's the God's honest truth. But I think what happened was, once I wrote the Bunnet, I think the characters in it are that good that I could write 100 books with the characters that I've got just for the Bunnet. And what happened was, when I finished the Bunnet, I was getting inundated with messages from people saying, when you're writing the next book, hurry up and get the next book out. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is crazy. And I would get things like, I want to know more about the character Hugo. I want to know more about the character Donald. I want to know. So even though JJ was the main character in the Bunnet, the other characters that were in it, people loved them and they wanted to know more about them. So I sort of thought, there's more scope here, with these characters. And that's why I done the second book, Hugo. Hugo was getting into the bookies every day and rinsing 2-3 grand of money, his drug money. And people were asking me where to go all this money for. So that gave me the idea, right, I'll do the second book, Hugo, and I'll take him back to the Costa del Sol in the 1990s and show everybody how he made his money. And so it was easy. So then I done that story, and then people were like, right, so what happens next? And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is like exploding here. So I had all these different ideas about how I could use these characters to do different books. It just exploded and went mental.
Did you write the characters to be sort of, you can use them in multiple stories, or is it just like you were saying, it's just a case of people latched onto it so firmly that it made you realise, geez, I can really bring these guys and put them in other stories? Or were they always sort of written with the intention of they can be extracted from the Bunnet and be put in any different story? Or was it momentum, word of mouth, that drove you to then start writing more and more and more?
Aye, definitely. The last bit you said, the momentum, for sure. Everybody just wanted more. I would get inundated all the time. Right, what about this character? We want to know more about this. We want to know more about that. And aye, it's just gone crazy. And like I said, if once my sixth book comes out at the end of the month and people read that, you'll see how all the characters just interlink all the way through all my books, and it's very smooth and they're very easy to read, and there's that many characters. I had a bit of paper just before I finished my last book, and I think there was something like 90 different characters that I had to try and squeeze into this new book, and they're from all the 5 books. So I've got like so many characters that I can use for different books. It's crazy.
I started reading the Bunnet, and what I like about it, so the characters, you think of yourself and you think, I know a Donald, I know a JJ. Everybody can identify with one of these people.
Aye, exactly, man, and that's why I've done it. You know, it's people that you know, and you feel as though you're in every single one of my stories. That's the thing. It's like I try and only write about what I know. I watched a thing where I'll just go off track. I'll do a Billy Connolly thing here, and I'll come back to the story. But I went back. I think it was after the Factory Girls, and I took a week off work one time. And what I did was I had this idea about this guy with multiple personalities, and I wanted to write a book about this guy who had 4 different multiple personalities. So for the whole week, I shut myself away in my room and watched documentary after documentary after documentary about all these people with multiple personalities, etc. And honestly, I was doing like maybe 15, 16 days like studying this, you know, psychologist interviews and psychiatrists and actual people with multiple personalities, watched them and tried to study them and took all these notes and stuff. And I think I was on about day 5 or day 6 of these 15, 16 days. And I clicked on this. I think he was like top 10 or top 3 psychiatrists in the world. And it was like a 40-minute interview. And I thought, I'll watch this. This is the last one I'm watching. You know, I was scunnered with it. I was absolutely shattered. So I clicked on this interview with this psychiatrist, and it said, you know, what do you think about people with multiple personalities? And the guy said, I think it's all utter nonsense. He says, I think it's an excuse for people's behaviour. He said, I don't believe in it. And I was like, yeah, bastard, you know, I've been sitting here for a week watching this and studying all this and stuff, and this guy's saying it's a load of nonsense. So in the top right-hand corner, there was you know how you get these linked videos? There was one with Sylvester Stallone in the top right-hand corner, and it said, any advice for budding authors or budding writers or something like that it was. And I clicked on it, and I love Sylvester Stallone. I've loved him since I was a wee boy. And I clicked on it, and he said, you know, have you got any advice for writers? And he said, aye, the best advice I could ever give writers is only write about what you know. See, if you don't know what you're writing about, people will pull you up in it. He said, so always just write about what you know. So just going back to what you said there, that's what I do. Only write about what I know now, because people can't pull me up on my stories because it's a life that I've lived, or it's things that I've seen in bookies, in pubs, things like that in Scotland. So all my books are based on people that I know. Believe it or not, they're actually people that I know, and people that you know, and people that everybody knows. And that's what I try and do, is just connect with everybody, because it's people that you know.
It makes you engage with the reading more. I think it does get you more engrossed in the story when you're reading about people that you can picture. It brings you into the story. I see there's a Donald in the pub that I drink in. Like that type of idea.
Aye, that's it. And that's all I try to do. And I love that. See the feedback you're just giving me there. I love that. See when people come back to me and say, that Hugo reminds me of my uncle, that Hugo reminds me of my dad, or whatever. That's what you want to hear.
Talking about Daisy, what made you want to go down a darker route with your writing?
I just don't want to be a one-trick pony, if I'm being honest with you. That's why I've done it. It's a very disturbing and dark story, as you know, and I just wanted to do something different. I didn't want to be the same genre writer, and so I wanted to do something different, and that's why I went down that road. I went down the shock value road and wanted to see, and I was shit scared of that story coming out, because I wondered what the reader would think of it, and see, to be honest with you, the feedback again's been brilliant. And as dark as the story is, there's obviously a plot twist in it that gives a sort of positive ending, if you like, to a horrific story. But I just don't want to be known as a one-trick pony and try different things, and that's why I went down that route. And thankfully, it came out all right.
Going on to Bonded by Burns, that is reading through the premise of all the stories. Two characters falling into a time machine on a hill walk. How does that idea even come into your head?
To be honest with you, I'm a massive Back to the Future fan, and
I did think that, to be honest.
Honestly, mate, I just love the films, and I just wanted to do something with time travel, and I thought, I need to freshen my ideas up a wee bit as well and bring in different characters. So that's why I brought in these two characters, Kenny and Jock. They haven't featured in any of my other books, and again, I wanted to be known as a one-trick pony, so I wanted to do something different. And they go back and they visit Robbie Burns, back in the day when he was around, and then they go and visit Sean Connery. But there's a message in the book. I wrote it during COVID, when COVID first started, and what COVID's done for all of us, I think, is made us realise what's important in life and what we could do better in life and how we can help people and help our communities and things like that. And there's a strong message in the book, and it's outstanding. The book is absolutely outstanding. And going back to what I said, always write about what you know. There's stuff in there like Robbie Burns. When you meet Robbie Burns is in the bar in Dumfries that he actually drank in with his best pal. The landlady is the actual landlady of the pub at the time. The lassie behind the bar is the lassie that actually got pregnant at the time. And every single thing that happens in the book is spot on. And going back to the Sean Connery bit, for them to go back to Edinburgh for me was perfect, because I've lived in Edinburgh, so I know Edinburgh like the back of my hand. So writing about Edinburgh and all the places that they went to in Edinburgh, I lived in Edinburgh, so I know it inside out, and the places that they go and visit and stuff. And the book is absolutely tremendous, and it can be a standalone book. So if you haven't read the other four, you can just go straight to Bonded by Burns and read that. The same with Hugo and the Bunnet. It doesn't matter what order you read the two in. Even though the books are sort of in order, you could read Hugo before you read the Bunnet, because in the Bunnet you'll then understand where Hugo gets his money from. So the books are very clever the way I've done them.
Good. And the upcoming book, With Change Comes Consequences, that's a sequel to Bonded by Burns. How have you linked the two, if you're allowed to give that away?
I basically, sort of like the Back to the Future films, the Bonded by Burns, I left it on a sort of cliffhanger. So the guys get an opportunity to go back into the time machine or not, sort of like Back to the Future. And what they do is they obviously do get back in it, but I think with Bonded by Burns, they go back and visit different people from Scottish culture, i.e. Robbie Burns and Sean Connery. But in this one, what they do is they get the opportunity to go back to all my different books and change one thing that happened in every one of my books. So something happens in the Bunnet that they get to go and change, but with change comes consequences. So it might be a good thing what they do, or it might be a bad thing. So this is what I'm saying to everybody, is you can't read this new book unless you've read the other five, because there's massive spoilers of all my other books in this new one. But they go back and they revisit every single one of my books and they change one thing, but with change comes consequences.
What made you decide to write this with the premise that you have to have read the five before? Because you haven't done that. You've just spoken before about you could pick them up in different orders. So what makes this book special in that it ties together the five before?
Again, I think it's a clever thing that I've done, and just to go back and revisit them, because I've got that many fans of all the different books now that I think it's good for the reader to revisit the other books. And like I said, for example, Daisy is a tragic horrific story, but they actually go back and get an opportunity to change, obviously, the main thing that happens in that book. So it's a good thing and it's a bad thing, because that's what I'm saying. With change comes consequences. They're going to go back and maybe change something bad that happened in one of my books, but something bad might happen because of that. So again, it's quite clever how I've done it, and I don't really want to say too much more about it because I don't want to give anything away. But as you can imagine, there's tragic things that happen, there's bad things that happen, and these guys go back in the time machine and get the opportunity to change them. So it's just a clever premise what I've done, I think.
Do you enjoy writing trilogies and books that all exist within the same universe? Is that better and more enjoyable for you compared to, say, writing standalone books?
At the minute, because there's a market for it, and like I said, there's a fan base for it now. So I think when I've finished a book, I get inundated, as I said before, I just get inundated about these different characters and the characters that people love. I want to know more about this, I want to know more about that. And like I said as well, I could write 100 books, honestly, with these characters, because there's that much scope with each of them. It's crazy how many characters I've got and how many are loved by different people. It's not just one character that the readers love, it's multiple characters. So I think I could do standalone again, but I think there's so much scope for these characters that I will continue, and while there's a market for it, then I'd be silly not to continue.
And will, as you say, the market dictate whether or not there's a sequel to this book?
Aye, there's an opportunity to be a sequel to this new book again, but there's also an opportunity for me to go away and try different things.
Yeah.
Honestly, I've got like multiple ideas in my head for different books, but it's gone back to what I said earlier with the Sylvester Stallone thing. It's only want to write about what I know, and the experiences that I've had in life. I've lived the life of 10 men already. It's crazy. It's the places I've been, the places that I've lived in, and all around the world. I can write different things about, but I'm not sure if that's the route I'm going to go down. I've got lots of different options. So I think, like I said, whilst the market is still there for these characters, then I'll just stick with these at the minute, I think.
Move on now to sort of life and topical things, then we'll close out talking about the release of the new book. You did a lot of your writing through the pandemic, is that right?
Aye. I've done a lot of it through the pandemic.
Would COVID then have not helped you, but would that have given you the time to dedicate to it?
I don't think it would have mattered to me, to be honest. I do a lot of my writing. I take like 3-4 days a week off to do writing, and I'll spend maybe 6-7 hours a day doing it when I'm writing a book. So I don't think COVID would have mattered, but it definitely gave me the idea for Bonded by Burns. Like I said, there's a strong message in Bonded by Burns about how we can all help each other, and it was COVID that definitely inspired that book. But no, I've got enough time set aside for my writing, and COVID wouldn't have mattered, but it definitely influenced Bonded by Burns for sure.
How was the pandemic in Gibraltar and the south of Spain? How would you say they've dealt with it?
When it first happened, it was quite serious over here. They had the police and the army and stuff on the streets, and the Spanish took it very, very seriously. And I live literally just outside Gibraltar, and it was a bit of a nightmare getting into Gibraltar and getting out of Gibraltar back into Spain. And I'm not sure if your listeners are aware of the politics between Gibraltar and Spain, but sometimes the Guardia Civil can be arses, basically, and you need this paperwork, you need that paperwork, and like they can just shut the border down in one day. And if you're working there, it's a bit of a nightmare. So there was times like they would ask you for a works contract to get through the border if you didn't have that on you, if you didn't have proof of residency in Spain, and they just throw little spanners in the work. And so for that side of things, it was a bit of a nightmare for us guys and girls that live in Spain and work in Gibraltar. But I felt as though they dealt with it quite well, the Spanish. But it's just been a nightmare for everybody. I think I don't think it matters where you live. But we're just all getting on with it, aren't we?
Do you see yourself heading back to Ayrshire anytime soon?
Well, hopefully very soon. I think the COVID tests are costing more than the flights at the minute, and the last time I was home was last August, September, when my dad died, and I haven't been back since then. But hopefully I can get back, hopefully next month or the month after, but not permanently, for sure. That I'll definitely not be moving back. I don't think. I'm very happy where I am.
As we're recording this today, they're waiting on an announcement about the COVID test rules changing. I think at our end anyway, there's going to be an announcement either today or tomorrow. I think they're going to be doing away with the amber list, so it will just become either you can go or you can't go. And I think if you've been vaccinated, you don't need to do a PCR anymore. I think that's what's going to happen. So fingers crossed that helps you out.
Aye, I think they're scrapping it from October the 1st, somebody told me yesterday, so hopefully Scotland follows suit. Aye, and like you said, it'll make it easier for myself and for everybody else as well. If I can get home for less than £100, I'll be home very, very frequently, and I think I'll get more visitors that way as well. So hopefully it gets scrapped. I think it's more opinion it's all a load of nonsense, and it's a money-making scheme, and they need to get rid of it, and so that people can travel and more freely.
Finally then, just to see us out, where can people find you on social media, and tell us when the book is released? I've
got Facebook, Instagram and Twitter accounts, and if you just type in Scott Alcroft to any of them, you can find me on there. The new book, With Change Comes Consequences, is out on Amazon on the 29th of this month, September 2021. And I've got an author's page on Amazon as well, so if you want to go on there and check me out, I'm on there. And like I alluded to earlier, you can check out my 6 books in the next 2 weeks. You can go on and read the first, second, third chapters, I think it is, for most of them, and get a feel for what they're like. And they're definitely all for people over the age of 18. There's a lot of there's a lot of swear words and stuff like that in them, but it's just the way Scottish people speak, and if that offends you, then obviously they might not be for you. But they're all funny, heartwarming stories, and like we said earlier about Daisy, that's a lot darker and quite a horrific story, but the rest of them are quite funny and quite jolly, and that's it. And if anybody needs any advice on writing or publishing, I'm easily accessible on social media, so don't hesitate to contact me, and I'll try and give you the best advice that I can.
And there you have it. Big thanks to this week's guest Scott for his time. Scott's social media accounts, as well as the links to buy his previous books and his upcoming book, are in the show notes. Usual bits and pieces for me to see you out. The best way to keep up to date with future episodes of Lost for Words is to follow using the handle @LostForWordsPod on both Twitter and Instagram. To support the show, hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts, and if you're an Apple user, a 5-star review in your podcasts app means the world. If you like what you hear, then tell someone. Word of mouth is also really powerful in helping us to grow. That is all from me for this week. I hope to see you back next time for another episode of the Lost for Words podcast.